now like to invite the proposition speaker, first speaker from side proposition, to open today's debate.
Is everybody ready? Everyone deserves the universal right to listen to music and express themselves, but unfortunately, not everybody is in the economic position to do so. Now, first, I will go over our model, then our framework, definitions, and then burdens, and then move on to our two substantives. First, our model. We would set up a music system where every couple of songs you listen to, you would have to listen to a 30-second ad as well. Music would be free in the system because you don't have to pay for the songs you listen to, as ad companies would pay these companies 30-second ads on the service, which all go to the artists. Artists would have incentives to produce by the revenue from ad companies, as well as being able to allow anyone, regardless of this current economic situation, to listen to their music. Now, our framework. The thesis statement of the proposition is that we have to let anyone who wants to listen to music give them the ability to do so. The principle level is just that, providing for those who can't do so for themselves. The pragmatic level is that artists make money from the ads and have a continued incentive to produce music, as well as letting everybody enjoy their music. Now, our definitions. We define free as in free for the consumer, where they do not have to pay to listen to the music. Now, burdens. The proposition burden in this round are to prove that artists have an increased incentive to make music, as they would make money based on how many people listen to their songs, and also that a broader group of people can now enjoy music. Now, the opposition's burden in this round is to prove that anybody who wants to listen to music has the economic ability to do so. Now, moving on to our first substantive. Voting prop allows for improved access to music for all people, especially those who are oppressed by their economic status with regards to music. Two levels of analysis. First is that people who cannot pay for music are excluded from forms of social discourse in our society currently. Now, imagine Timmy, a Canadian boy from a lower-class Canadian household. Kanye just releases his new album. However, Timmy can't listen to Kanye's new album because he can't afford it. Now, that's making it an unequal disparity between people who are rich and people who are poor, people who can't afford music and who can afford music, from allowing them to participate in social discourse versus not. We let our economic status already define so much in our lives. Let's not let it define music. Let's not let it define something that should really only be positive, that is a form of art that we should allow to express ourselves and really only be positive. Let's allow music to unite us and not divide us. Now, our second level of analysis is that improved access to unifiers, such as music, are intrinsically good. Now, A. Allowing everybody access to free music allows people to be unified. Almost everybody has access to an internet device, and by 2050 it is projected that almost the whole world will be online. Why not take advantage of this now? What we're saying is if everybody has access to the internet, they all have access to the system. Now, this system is uniquely good because it allows everybody to listen to all types of music, not just based on their economic status. Now, why that is good is because music should not be something that experiences divisions because of, say, you're wealthy, poor, anywhere in between. Now, moving on to our second substantive. Music can spread much more easily to people if it is free. But first,
how are people who don't have the economic ability to get into this industry and get profit from that ever going to be incentivized to enter into the music industry?
People, when they get into this industry. Now, this industry is key for people who are not big record companies because this is a merit-based industry under our system. The fact is that the more views, the more listens you get, the more money you get from the government, from the UN who's charging this program. Basically what this means is that under our here, I'll explain the model specific to that. The model is the idea that after every couple songs you listen to, there's an ad. Now that money from the ad goes directly to the artists who are making the the songs that you listen to. Now that specifically allows people to get success and money based on their merits and skill, rather than just some artist who's just sponsored by a big record company. Now, back onto our second substantive. Things that are free are more likely to be used, especially if you're unaware of the artist. Now, you're not likely to buy an album if you have to spend money on it if it's from an artist that you have no idea who they are. Now, some examples of this are Tinder and eHarmony. Tinder is free while eHarmony costs money to join. Now, the example of this is more people use Tinder than eHarmony. Now, why is that? Because there's no fear of wasting any money by joining Tinder because you don't need to be worried about the economic repercussion that it could have on you. Now, also, think of this as in reference to the App Store. For instance, there's light versions of apps which people frequently download because A, they show a shortened version of the app and they're free. Now, you're more likely to download that rather than the full version of the app, which actually costs money because you can get a sample of it. Now, Our second level of analysis is that different music allows for more diverse viewpoints. Now, international music. Now take this as an example. E. Young, a South Korean artist, had a song that was a backtracking for a YouTube commercial. It became an overnight success with millions of views. What this means is that the only reason why E. Young became popular was because he had the international exposure that he could only gain from getting his music into the US market. Now, our platform allows for more international music to be spread, which allows for more diverse and different viewpoints to be heard. Music carries ideas and messages throughout the song, and each song has a different viewpoint and message. Now, we believe that if we can get people listening to different types of music and more increased diversity in music, that we'll be able to spread more different messages. But first,
you say that you promote diversity and music development in low-income areas, and you also say that the people with more views get the more money. So how are you going to establish that minority disadvantaged voice in that sort of system?
well, those are two separate issues. First is the idea that minorities in the current system, because of their economic status, they're not able to buy these albums, thus experience different types of music. And now specific to the people who are producing the music, in the current system right now, the only way you can get actually your songs to be heard is if you have the backing of a huge record industry. However, this system, these huge record industries, they aren't necessary to become famous because it's based on your skill level and your merit as an artist. Now, back to our model. Basically, the idea of our model is that people can listen to increased variety of music without having to pay for it. And the advertisements that companies would pay to have their advertisement, that money goes directly to the person producing the music. Now, that's specifically good because if the artist is getting paid and the person listening to it does not have to actually pay for the music, it's a win-win scenario for everybody. And that is why I strongly propose the motion. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the speaker for her remarks, and now I invite the first speaker of side opposition to open their side of the debate.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, art does not belong to everyone. Art is crucial to individual expression, and we tell you that for the individuals in our society who feel misunderstood, who feel repressed, their contribution to the music industry is absolutely important, and we tell you that their contribution only exists on our side in this debate. We stand for the integrity of personal narratives, and we tell you that musicians ought to be able to control those narratives. They only have that control in our side of the house. So we tell you that when you make music free and when you make the distribution free, you undermine any kind of control, any kind of diversity in the music industry that we see to be so important. So I want to do two things in this speech. I'm firstly going to be refuting everything that we've just heard from side proposition, and then going to be presenting two constructive arguments, and then my partner Ellie is then going to bring our third substantive. But first of all, I just want to clarify, what is our stance? In our world, we still have the radio. We still have streaming services such as Spotify. We're not getting rid of that. We just don't think that music shouldn't be owned by the artists themselves. We think that they should be able to profit off of it. We think that's completely justified, just to clarify. But now let's get into some refutation. So first of all, we have a huge strategic issue with the model that we heard from side proposition, where they kind of slipped in that the UN or some sort of body is going to be paying these artists through advertisements. I have two problems with this assertion that these artists are going to be making the same amount of money in their world. First of all, ad companies pay the streaming services, not the artists themselves. Artists like Taylor Swift, artists like the Black Keys refuse to put their music on Spotify because they recognize that every play goes towards the streaming service, not towards the artists themselves. We don't think this changes under their side. Not yet. No thanks. Okay. So then they talk about how everyone is going to have the ability to access all this music, and then there's going to be all this diversity, right? I have a few problems with that. And they bring up the example of K-pop. First response, K-pop would not exist without money, right? We recognize there's a huge amount of production value, there's a huge amount of costuming and choreography and a lot that has to go into that music in order for it to be accessible, in order for it to be interesting, in order for it to be unique, right? We recognize that when these artists are not getting paid, when they don't have the same amount of money that is really crucial for their careers, we're not going to get these kinds of really innovative artists that we think are so important. I'm going to talk a lot about that in my constructive. But moreover, we tell you we get more diverse viewpoints on our side, and Ellie's going to talk about this a lot, at the point at which individuals have incentives to get into the music industry. We don't have artists like Childish Gambino, we don't have artists like Britney Spears getting into the industry at the point at which they come from poverty and their families literally depend on them. we don't get to hear their viewpoints, and we don't get like them producing music at the point at which they don't have any profit because like they don't have anything else to rely on. Like they don't have the privilege to be able to be a part of this institution or of this industry. So I want to get to my first constructive, talking about the music industry and how it is fundamentally harmed by everything that we hear from side proposition. Now this occurs on two levels. So the first is on the level of the artists. We would tell you that the reason that artists are incentivized to enter into the music industry is because they really love music. They want to express themselves in a way that is unique, in a way that is like within their own control. We also recognize that they're taking a huge risk when they're doing this, right? So we think that the profit is a massive incentive in order for them to continue to create music that we think is so important when we look at our culture, when we look at the kinds of things and the kinds of conversations that we're having. Now what happens when you distribute music for free is that individuals won't dedicate their lives to music, right? You're more likely to have music artists that have the amount of money and like have a day job in order to like have that career, and then they have their music career on the side. What that means is two things. Firstly, you exclude individuals that don't have the privilege to like have that opportunity cost in terms of how they're allocating their time because they can't afford to really like, fully have like this full throttle to that industry. But secondly, the quality of that music that you do get is extremely decreased because they're not putting that much time into it. They're not trying to be innovative. They're not like putting their entire career into that. I think that's harmful. Yes.
Under our model, artists still get paid and still have the incentive to create work.
Okay. So the kinds of people that still have incentives to create work under their side are people that I literally just outlined, right? The people that have the money, the people that are actually able to like spend their time making music. But moreover, we tell you that they're not paid significantly and like they're not paid nearly as much as they are in our world. They're going to have to do a lot of work to prove why they are. So now I want to talk about how, like, second layer under this argument is how the quality of music decreases as a whole. Recognize what tremendous profit does for your career when we're specifically talking about music, an industry that like requires a lot of production value, like when you're creating music videos, when you're hiring people to write your lyrics, and when you're like putting on these massive productions at your concerts. We see three things. First of all, it fundamentally changes your lifestyle, right? At the point at which an artist like Donald Glover is able to like gain a massive amount of profit from his music, he's able to like fully throw himself into that career. When the change in lifestyle means that like the artist can change their calculus, change their thinking as to how important music actually is to their lives. That's when we get the kind of music that is really integral to self-expression and that is dealing with the most important issues of those artists. The second thing that you get is innovation. We tell you that like artists no longer are going to play it safe in their world, right? Because they don't have like that much of an opportunity to exist for long periods of time in the music industry, at the point at which you have so many individuals just creating music and it's all based on views, right? We would tell you that Beyonce's Lemonade would not be nearly as impactful in their world at the point at which artists cannot establish themselves as being respectable, as kind of like contributing to the mainstream and feeding into the kinds of things that people want. People aren't going to listen to these messages that make waves and we think are so important for social progress when they are easily rejected, when they don't come from a point of respect, and when they don't come from someone who they already recognize to be important and someone who is going to be lasting in the music industry for a very long time. In their world, these kinds of messages, like we see with Lemonade, are easily ignored. The third thing that you get are resources, right? We tell you at the point at which you're making money from profiting from music, you have access to things like travel. You can work with different mentors. You can buy new equipment. But the impacts of this is that you are able to diversify your style, right? We get less of the problem of like one-hit wonders at the point at which people are willing to adapt to the industry. They're willing to adapt to the way that's like society, like what society wants. And we think that that's really good in terms of creating diverse music that we think people enjoy listening to. And we think that for the consumer specifically, they're going to be more invested in these artists at the point at which they are adapting their style, they are willing to kind of change things. And we think that individuals are going to be more likely to kind of stop and think about the new messages that seem kind of uncomfortable at first, that these artists are propagating at the point at which they are going to be in the industry for the long term. Let's get into my second argument about the rights of the artist to control narratives. We tell you that in a society where we see voices of queer people, black people, women, Muslim people, people with mental illnesses are ignored and oppressed constantly, music is a very important mechanism and medium for them to be able to express themselves in a way that doesn't always resonate with all individuals. We think that's really crucial. We also tell you that self-expression is so integral to the individual that they should be able to control their narrative, right? We look at the example of Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift patents a lot of her lyrics because she feels like the expression that she is like having on individuals is not being really interpreted in the way that she would like it to be, because they are kind of taking her lyrics and putting them like on things on Etsy. She doesn't really agree with that. We think that's totally justifiable insofar as your personal expression is your own. We think that you should be able to have control over that. That only happens under our side. So what you can credit side opposition for in today's debate is two things. We talk about the consumer, so we analyze the ways in which we think about music and how that's going to change on our side. But secondly, we talk about the voice of the artists, and we prefer a world where we have more artists and better artists. We are so proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank the speaker for her remarks, and now invite the second speaker of side proposition to continue.
Alrighty. I'm going to start with the framing, then I'll move on to the opposition's case. I will address the two critical flaws that they made in their case, then I will go on to review the proposition case, and then I will bring up the third constructive proposition argument. So to go back to the framing. Now the really key part of the framing in this debate is look to the plan of the proposition. Now my opponent seems to think that the plan is somehow unfair, and her stance that it will still be on the radio, still on streaming services. What the proposition is proposing here is a plan in which music is free to all people, because we define the free as monetary cost, seeing as it is free to everybody, yet they watch ads. Now these ads provide direct revenue to the artists. It is this revenue that truly incentivizes the artists to enter the market. Now this leads directly into the argument my opponent makes in her issue, is that like the music wouldn't exist at the quality that it's at and the diversity that it has, and just essentially like the music industry would change drastically if artists weren't getting paid what they were. It would be more difficult for artists to dedicate themselves wholly. This is not at all what we are arguing for. We simply defend artists are still getting paid, but the means by which they are getting paid decreases oppression to the groups who cannot afford to pay for albums. Thus we both solve for oppression and remove all of the harms of the opposition, because the opposition argues firmly that by not paying these artists that it will reduce music, and then they go on to their first fatal flaw, which is that they say that music is important to social progress. We, as the proposition, agree. Music is key to social progress. But how can we truly have meaningful social progress when this music is not reaching everybody? Thus, social progress would be unfairly targeting the people who can afford the music. And this is solved for by the proposition plan. So turn that argument completely proposition, because their side still excludes the oppressed. Thus, is it truly social change? Moving on to the second fatal flaw, they say music is key to the oppressed people. People such as the disabled who can't express themselves normally, and music is a way of doing that. We agree. But how is music going to help these oppressed people with their self-expression if they are only allowing it to be distributed to certain groups of people? We do not exclude. The key flaw in their case is that they exclude the economically disadvantaged. Whether as the proposition takes this into account, yes.
Our point is that these disadvantaged groups don't have a foothold to establish a footprint. That's the problem.
Okay, that is a key to the plan. Think of the plan as a way of leveling the playing field, where you do not need a major record deal to release an album. It is completely based on the talent of the artist. This, we would argue, is beneficial towards the disabled people on two levels. First, the plan itself increases their access to music, not necessarily for disabled people, but for oppressed people. And second of all, it allows them all to have an equal starting place, meaning that an underground rapper with an incredible song who can't get a record deal has the same equal opportunity to the market as a well-known artist, because it is a complete merit-based system. Whereas in the status quo where you have to pay for music, the scales are tipped in the favor of those with record deals and massive advertising deals that can help them disseminate their music. Now to review the points of the proposition. So the proposition makes the arguments that we are removing the oppression from people, or not necessarily removing the oppression, but giving the oppressed people greater access to music. We do this by making the platform available to everyone. They do not touch the point about internet access. Thus, if you truly believe in the plan, everybody should have access to music. This is key because A, it allows everybody to be unified under their views regarding music, and B, allows the exchange of ideas, which currently only, with regards to music, only goes on between people who can afford this music. Think about Timmy, the Canadian boy who cannot afford this album and can't engage with his peers on a level regarding this album because he cannot afford it. Under the proposition, we solve for this oppression. Then moving on to the second point of the proposition. Actually, can we go back to the framing really quickly? So, the key issue in this round is that we are giving more music to more people. Whereas their entire argument is based on the consumer level. Now they're arguing that it's going to decrease the amount that music will be able to affect the consumer, but the proposition in no way causes this shift, seeing as the plan itself solves for this. The plan allows everybody to get access to music, incentivizes music because the advertising revenue goes to the artists, so all of these pseudo-capitalist impacts that they're able to weigh on disappear. Yes?
You refuse to actually engage with the specific attacks that Nika brings to you against your model. The way advertising companies work is they don't just give money to the producer, but rather to the platform that's...
We are defending a platform that is run by the United Nations. As such, revenue would be distributed to artists based on the listens that artist garners on their work. This is a merit-based system which again levels the playing field because it's truly giving the people what they want to listen to, and as such they're getting paid for how good their music is, not what starting place they came from, removing both standpoint oppression and the oppression caused by people who are being forced to pay for music. Moving on to the third substantive point of the proposition, making music free de-incentivizes illegal pirating of music. If music is made readily available and free, there's no reason to pirate. This plays right into their whole point about Taylor Swift's copyright laws. There would be no incentive necessarily for you to pirate Taylor Swift songs if this was free to everyone, because everybody has access. It would remove the harms that pirating does. Secondly, it's less likely to occur in the proposition world because obviously people would like to listen to better quality, legally available music as opposed to having to get second source pirated music that is also illegal. Thus, there is really no reason they would pirate in the proposition world. So the proposition world is winning on two levels. The levels being, one, we reduce oppression in two ways. We reduce the oppression of the people who cannot afford the music. We also reduce the oppression in that artists are not currently coming from equal starting places, whereas under the plan, artists are coming from the same starting place because it's truly based in their merit and not on the economic standing. This goes right into their whole point about Childish Gambino, and I think it was Britney Spears who they said we're artists living in poverty, but who gained this great acclaim that by making it free we wouldn't be able to do that. In fact, we solve for that. That is necessarily the point of the plan, because the plan allows for these artists to all have equal opportunity and rise through the system. The third point under point 3 is that pirated websites exist because you are forced to pay for music, so you look to the alternative. In the proposition world, the music industry is helped and illegal pirating is stopped. There's greater access to music for everybody. People are less incentivized to pirate because there would be no reason to pirate if you can get the music that you would be pirating legally. There's no reason that you would do that. Now just to kind of go and do an overview of the debate round, we see two frameworks, one of which argues a plan that reduces the harms of the opposition, and the second one that kind of speaks on how, that our side would not diversify viewpoints and that people wouldn't be able to dedicate themselves fully. The point about how you would be able to dedicate yourself fully and how the quality of music would fall is true in the status quo, like right now, because if these people are coming from a place where they're relatively unheard of, they dedicate themselves to their music, as that in the future their music might be good enough to gain them acclaim and create this profit. This is in no way unique to either side of the debate. Both sides would cause the artists to dedicate themselves fully, seeing as the incentive still remains. That's the key point. We do not remove economic incentive. The advertising companies are paying the artists, as that when the artists get listens, they then make more money. This removes the harms. Also, they try to weigh on oppression in their speech. That is a strategic issue because they win oppression on both levels. Thus, I strongly urge a proposition ballot.
I'd like to thank the speaker for his remarks, and now I invite the second speaker of side opposition to continue their side of the debate.
All right.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Imagine you're a musician. You've been living paycheck to paycheck because people directly buy your albums. But suddenly everything changes. Your albums are now free. You don't have the ability to continue making music because you don't have that money to fall back on anymore. That is what the proposition is trying to get to happen. I'm going to do a few things in this speech. First, I'm going to discuss the contentious framing issue throughout the round. Second, I'm going to attack their substantive arguments. Third, I'll defend our own. And then finally, I'll introduce our third substantive argument. With that, let's discuss the framing, beginning with the model. Now, there are a few problems with the model, which Mika brilliantly points out, but which they refuse to acknowledge. First, this isn't how ad companies work. When ad companies play their ads on streaming services, the revenue goes directly to the streaming service and not the artist. But second, this isn't how streaming revenue works. Like they later say, it's based on the clicks themselves, which means those underground rappers that they're talking about, these low-income artists who are just starting out, will never have the ability to actually get invested in and furthermore grow their industry. They won't get money if it's based on clicks in the first place. But third, they don't differentiate how their streaming system is different from like Spotify right now. And at the level where they never engage with the idea that things like Spotify can still exist, they don't actually differentiate why their system is better. But fourth, this isn't what the United Nations does. The United Nations is going to get involved in the frivolities of music. Yes.
How would artists starting at the same starting place exacerbate the inequality between them if they're all given equal access to the same market?
Because artists can't get exposure if they're among millions of other random artists and they're based on clicks alone. You have no way for artists to get off the ground, thus you can't claim any of your impacts. But now let's discuss the burdens. Remember what they say. They have to prove that there's increased incentive for artists to make art in the world of the proposition. What we show is that when artists are actually paid directly, they have more of a reason to make art that allows more artists to enter the industry. But now I'm going to attack their substantive arguments. First, they talk about improved access. But again, they don't directly engage with Nika's answers. First, she tells you streaming can still exist. Things like Spotify can still allow access to music in a more controlled medium. But second, things like radio will still exist. So again, this can still happen. But third, you don't give low-income people access to the actual production of music in the world of the proposition. Because what they tell you themselves is that people will only get money if they get more clicks. Breaking through in the music industry is not that easy. At that level, you'll see music being by the rich for the rich, because it's only the rich who have the ability to enter the industry and know that it's acceptable when they fail. So even if you do buy that music is slightly less accessible in the world of the opposition, in the world of the proposition, it will be empty and it will be meaningless because it will be about the rich. At that level, you don't see those underground people getting exposure. Yes?
Oh, I was just gonna, why is it rich to rich if everybody's coming from the same starting place and still has monetary incentive to do it when we're also defeating oppression on the side of the listener and not just the artist?
Because a low-income individual can't just hope to get $1 from 100,000 clicks and abandon their everyday lives because of it. It's a pretty lofty position to take that risk without people directly buying their albums. Now, the second argument they make is that music is more easily distributed and accessible in the world of the proposition. A few problems here. First, they argue music will be more likely to be used in their world. But remember what they say. At the level where streaming and radio are still able to exist, that's not true. But second, they say that music will be more diverse. But that's not true because first of all, their idea of ad revenue is unrealistic, and that goes directly to the streaming services. But second, because they rely on clicks, those individuals who are already counted against in the industry, who are already devalued in the industry, will never get paid attention to, and as a result, they'll be disincentivized from entering the industry. But third, remember what Mika tells you. Their own example, K-pop is about flamboyance, it's about the show, it's about production value. People in the States, people in the West would have no idea about K-pop if they couldn't see how fun it is, if they couldn't see the massive production value that goes into creating K-pop groups and creating K-pop artists. But their third substantive argument is about pirating. First of all, the reason that pirating is considered so harmful is because artists are getting cheated out of the revenue that they need to continue making their art. The proposition is pirating to the maximum. But second, at the level where, again, you have streaming and radio, people don't have a change incentive to pirate in the world of the opposition. But third, we would say that allowing marginalized groups to get out their voices, allowing every individual to have an equal chance to enter the industry because they know that they can actually be paid is much more important than a few kids illegally downloading music from YouTube. But now, we're going to go on and defend our own points. First, we talk about the importance of profit. He never directly engages with this. He just says some
non-focused rhetoric about disabled people that makes no sense. Artists cannot make footprints without a foothold. 3 reasons. First, because profit is the incentive that allows people to enter the industry in the first place. Second, because of quality and innovation. When artists can only afford to make this music is only valuable because their lifestyles can change. But third is the resources itself. If music isn't making money, then there's no reason that music will ever improve. First, because there will be no production value, people won't be able to get off the ground. And second, because no one's going to invest in something that doesn't make any money. At that level, losing profit degrades music. But the second substantive argument we give you is about focusing on narratives by the artist. Again, they don't directly engage with the layers of this argument we give you. First, we say that people should be able to directly control their own narratives in order to make money. That gives more varied platforms to disadvantaged voices. But second, their model directly gives control to the streaming services. It says the streaming services should be the ones filtering the ad revenue through, and that the streaming services are realistically the ones who make more money when you have ad revenue. When you have money going directly to the artists, they have more autonomy because the money from an album purchase allows artists to get their voice out, to express unpopular opinions more than a random streaming services does. But third, again, they don't actually empower disadvantaged voices by making it easiest for rich people to enter the industry. Now, I'm going to go on to our third substantive argument, which is that what they're saying devalues art itself. The first layer is why art itself is important. First of all, art music is a way to express individual identity. A few examples. Born This Way by Lady Gaga talks about getting your voice out no matter your situation. Second, Secrets by Mary Lambert, in which she discusses her sexuality, in which the first line out of her mouth is about the bipolar disorder. Issues like this aren't discussed in mainstream media and would have no ability to be discussed if not for her music. Third, Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko. When that song came out, and part of its popularity was the fact that the music video had so much production value, it made a huge splash in communities of women loving women. It showed women who love women that their voices matter, that they're worth a show. That wouldn't happen in their world. Another example is Bad Girls by MIA, in which the lyrics Suki Suki mean drive drive and are literally about empowering women in the Middle East. The second reason that they're important is because music is a form of protest. A few examples again. Stand Up For Your Rights by Bob Marley. Shutting Detroit Down by John Rich, which is about how big companies exploit low-income people and how Wall Street bailouts contribute to this. Or third, Helly Love's music video, in which she goes into ISIS territory and takes a stand. But they devalue music for a couple of reasons. First, because we see the free as the frivolous. When people can just collect music, when they don't have to put their money into it and select it individually, then at that level, music is devalued. But second, because marginalized artists won't be able to enter the industry. If you're not paying artists directly, only the rich, only the white will have the platform to fall back on. At that level, you exclude artists like Britney Spears and Childish Gambino, who came from a place of poverty, and you exclude artists like MIA, who was a refugee. You exclude those artists and make room for the privileged.
Thank the speaker for her remarks. And now I'd like the third speaker of side proposition to continue their side of the debate.
We must allow music to unite us, not divide us. The opposition fundamentally mishandles our model. The opposition continuously says that we are somehow not giving these artists money. I would just like to state that this is a streaming service run by the governments. This means that they are not gaining profit from this. We aren't taking away any money from the artists. The artists can continue to have this great production value and this great everything they claim can completely be turned for our side because their only claim is that artists will not be making money. However, in our world, artists will be making just as much money as in their world. Okay, I will first address their points, and then I will move on to reaffirming our points. But first, I would like you to consider the clash in this debate. What best benefits the artists and what best benefits the listeners? We believe that the proposition does the best job of benefiting the listeners. Okay. The opposition's argument against our case is that against our model is that ad companies' revenue goes to the streaming services. I already countered this. It does not go to the streaming services. It goes directly to the artists. The artists are making money. They also say that low-income artists won't get money because it goes to the streaming services. No, thank you. However, we see that it actually does go to the artist. Again, all of their arguments come back to this, but the proposition completely counters this. They also say that Spotify exists. Great, that's allowing free music on the internet. That is what the proposition is advocating for. However, we see that our model is even better because this is an international service. An international service is even better than radios because it is worldwide. You're able to get even more voices heard. Continuing, they say that artists don't get exposure. However, I would just like you to consider, when you have to invest in a $15 album, are you going to decide that you're going to spend $15 on the chance that a new artist might be good? Or are you going to go with your typical Taylor Swift? Of course you're going to go with what you already know is good. However, in our world, you don't have to pay for it. You can take a chance on a new artist, listen to it, try and explore some more. And then we see that new artists are able to get heard even more and more and more. No, thank you. So that counters their arguments about how it already exists. They don't really address most of our refutations to their arguments. They only try and continue to go on with their arguments without actually addressing the fact that the proposition completely solves for their entire case. Okay, continuing, they say that only the rich will be able to get money. No, not only the rich will be able to get money. We are just allowing artists to do the best they possibly can without trying to make the consumers harmed more. The listeners are helped more and more, as well as the artists, and thank you. So you say that artists will be able to talk about opinions more. Yes, great, an international service will allow artists to talk about opinions even more. In countries where it wouldn't be allowed, they can now talk about actual opinions. You have no uniqueness for why that would only happen in your world. If anything, someone is less likely to pay for it. So we do promote more voices and diverse voices. Okay, moving on to their refutations against our arguments. You say that the artists won't have money. This is your only argument. Fundamentally, this is the opposition's only argument, is that artists will not have money. That's just not true. In our model, the artists will have money. I don't know what else to say besides that. They will be making as much money because we are not having any money go to the streaming services. Yes?
Please tell me how the UN is going to allocate, whoever wants to get into the music industry, how much money they're going to get, and how it's going to be
we
decided.
already explained that when you are trying new artists, you listen to an artist and you hear the streams, that's how they get the money. It's not that complicated. You just set up an internet service. I've made a website. No, thank you. Okay, continuing. They say that against our second argument, basically the only thing they say is that you need production value. Yep, we like production value, that's great. We can keep allowing production value by supporting the artist. And against our third argument about less pirating, they say that artists will be cheated out of their revenue. No, they will not be cheated out of their revenue. We are supporting their ideas of allowing artists like Taylor Swift to keep their copywriting, to keep their great lyrics. And we allow them to keep doing this. However, the proposition solves for both solves for my 2 points of clash. First of all, the artists being able to express even more voices internationally, more voices getting their voices heard, and we solve for listeners who come from lower income statuses to be able to have their voices heard. And we also solve for pirating, which we don't support in the proposition's world. There's absolutely no reason for this to continue. So there's no reason that the opposition would win today's debate, because all of their arguments are contingent on this idea that they have created, that we don't pay artists or that we don't solve for anything. However, the proposition does solve for everything. I would like to go back to our burdens and framework so we can address that and firmly establish that the proposition has won today's debate. Okay, you say that so we said that the thesis statement of the proposition is that we have to let anyone who wants to listen to music have the ability to do so. We completely allow that. We are letting little Timmy be able to listen to Kanye if he wants to and engage in the rhetoric. We are letting anyone who wants to, we are letting someone who lives in another nation be able to listen to music from a different place to have even more voices heard for them. And we are allowing for the artists to be paid, especially unknown or impoverished artists. For example, apparently Britney Spears came from that. And the proposition meets our burden that the artists will have an increased incentive to create art, and that they would make money and they would have their voices heard and be able to talk about whatever they truly want to talk about. The opposition does not meet their burden that that people would be more likely to listen to music when they have to pay for it. They do not meet any type of burden of thank you that we have set upon them. So therefore, the proposition has won today's debate.
I'd like to thank the speaker for her remarks, and now invite the third speaker of side opposition to continue their side of the debate.
You are an artist trying to get your album sold at the international level. You're trying to get your voice heard, you're trying to get your message spread, and you're trying to make a difference, an impactful difference in the world around you. Then all of a sudden, side proposition comes up here, and they tell you that all of a sudden, music distribution is going to be completely free. But then they go in their model and say, no, artists will still make money, and then that'll happen through ad campaigns. That's not true, and I'll get into that in the latter half of my speech. But in this speech, I'll be doing a few things. First, I'll be going over some critical framing issues just to clear it up once and for all, and then I'll be posing 4 essential questions that you need to ask yourself when evaluating this round as a whole. First, who protects the integrity of music? Second, who protects the artist? Third, who gives individuals a voice? And lastly, who protects the music industry as a whole? With that being said, let's go firstly into the model. We heard a lot from side proposition about how they're going to have a distribution system based on streaming services with ads intermittently played for every X number of music videos or songs listened to. However, they also tell you, and this is where it becomes problematic, that when you have those people listen to those ads will supposedly transfer money from the UN into the artist's pockets. We say on side opposition that A, that's just blatantly not going to happen, but B, even if it does happen, that's still not enough to combat the loss of revenue that the artists will have compared to our world. Again, let's look at the specific responses that both Mika and Ellie iterated against their side that went unresponded to. In fact, the only attack that they responded to regarding their model is how that's not how ad companies work and they'll still get money. But remember the other few attacks that we brought up. First of all, that's not how streaming works. Not only do low-income people not have enough money to work with because they don't have as much exposure, but we also tell you that they don't even differentiate between current streaming mechanisms. Those 2 ideas go unresponded to by side proposition, and they completely undermine their model. Moreover, what we tell you is that under their model, they specifically look to the actor of the UN. And not only do we tell you that the UN not only does not care about a lot of these streaming services, but also that they are not going to be an effective actor in the first place. Then their first speaker comes up here and literally says the words that artists with more views will get more money. We ask one question to that. If you are not an established artist and you are coming from a disadvantaged background, again, trying to get your voice heard, how are you going to get that same number of views and how are you going to get more money? No, their model benefits the artists that have already actually established themselves in the music industry, not the ones that are trying to make an initial footprint. With that, let's go into the 4 questions you have to ask yourself. The first question, who protects the integrity of music as a whole? On side proposition, we really only hear one idea revolving around this question, and that's the issue of piracy. They tell you this huge amount of layers of analysis that tells you that by making free distribution of music allowable on the internet, that decreases piracy. We say, no, that actually does not happen. We lay 3 attacks, specific attacks against that argument that again, coincidentally go unresponded to. First, we tell you that the reason piracy is bad is because artists actually don't profit. That means that the piracy doesn't have as big of an impact as they would claim on their side of the house. Moreover, what we tell you is that streaming and videos already exist alongside radio services. They say that those aren't truly international. We completely disagree with that. They actually are. Third, we also tell you about the voice that artists get by actually establishing themselves at the international level. That completely counteracts their piracy argument, because even if people do try and pirate their own music in today's society when they have to pay to see music, what we would argue is that we outweigh all their piracy impacts by giving individuals a voice. Then, let's go to the second question that you have to ask yourself in today's round. Before I get into why we protect artists, a point.
How do you believe that the proposition is not giving an equal playing field to everybody if it's based on truly the merit of their music and not their economic starting place? Does the proposition not answer that burden?
Well, we feel like you haven't actually done that, and that's evidenced by the words issued by your own first speaker, where she tells you that only those with the more number of views will get the more number of money. And that's pretty logical. When you get more views, you get more ad time, and according to your model, that's going to get you more money. But which artist is actually going to get more views? The artist that has already established themselves in the music industry. That means that the disadvantaged voices that you claim to support so much won't actually get that voice that you want because they won't have a foothold to establish that footprint. Into that second question that we're going to ask ourselves. Who protects the artist? That's essentially the whole crux of our second substantive argument that literally goes unresponded to by side proposition. We tell you that not only is the artist's right to actually have their own narrative put out there, their own inherent right, but that right is inherently violated by allowing free distribution of music across the internet. What Mika and Ellie both iterate in both of their speeches is that when you have free distribution of music across the internet, it undermines not only the value of music, but the initial intent of the artist to write that music. The artist has unique claims, unique rights to the message that they're trying to spread. And at the point where allowing free distribution to music across the internet undermines that message by allowing anyone around the world to twist that message to suit their own needs, that violates the very purpose as to why the artist created the music in the first place. At the point where their own message is being twisted, that's when the music is also being undervalued. But first a point.
By making music free, you're allowing more people to hear music, which means more people can hear the artist's viewpoint. Isn't that what the artist wants, exposure over money?
We're granting that by having free distribution, more people can listen to music. But it's not the music of the disadvantaged artist, it's the music of the rich white pipe dream that's only being augmented by your own model. Then let's go on to the third question that you have to ask yourself in this round. Who gives individuals a voice? Now this is really where the side opposition gets a lot of ground here, because we directly attack their model in ways they themselves have not responded to, but we also tell you that in order to have an actual voice in the international community through music, you have to establish your own international presence. That only happens when you have initial funding. We brought in a few layers of analysis here, specifically in our first substantive argument. Not only does Mika tell you that the integrity of the music system, the music industry, relies on artists being able to not just sell their music abroad, but make money off of it. That's what keeps the music industry running, that's what keeps it innovative, that's what keeps it competitive, that's what gets more ideas of protest and general messages out there. But when you completely make the free distribution of music across the internet existing, that means that individuals do not get a voice. No thank you. The side proposition says that what they would argue for is getting rid of establishing free distribution of music across the internet, because supposedly that gives people increased access to music. Again, we tell you no. Yes, although it is increased access, it's selective artist access. That means that they're only listening to selective artists who already have an established presence. They're not addressing that fundamentally on their side of the house. But let's go on to the fourth question that you have to ask yourself. Who protects the music industry as a whole? What we heard from side proposition is really nothing around this question, and it's a really important question to analyze the crux of this debate. The reason why this motion exists, as to why we should whether or not allow free distribution of music across the internet, is we have to analyze how this would impact the music industry itself. On side opposition, we tell you that this would directly undermine the music industry as a whole, because instead of actually allowing for the music industry to be upheld, instead of allowing for innovation, instead of allowing for people's voices to be getting out there, instead of allowing people to actually establish that foothold in the international scale, on side proposition, they would allow free distribution systems based on the sort of false hope that individuals, specifically artists, will get money off of advertisements. That won't happen. So fundamentally, you have two worlds in front of you. The world of the proposition, in which they tell you that by having free distribution of music on the internet, not only will individuals supposedly have a voice, but they'll also be able to protect their own autonomy and establish a greater foothold in the international community. And you have the world of the opposition, which truly stands for individuals' rights at both the artist level and the individual level for getting those disadvantaged voices out there. That means, at the end of the day, if you stand for the rights of these low-income people, and if you stand for getting the integrity of the music industry for both the artists and the industry as well, you oppose.
I'd like to thank the speaker for his remarks, and now invite the reply speaker of side opposition to begin the close of this debate.
Thank you. I have two questions. Before I get into that, I really want to clarify the model attack that you've really heard down the bench from side opposition in today's debate. Two things. Side proposition wants to tell you that they're not going to take money from the artists. We're just talking about distribution. Ladies and gentlemen, distribution is literally how they make money. Second thing, they talk about how this UN funding is going to make an equal playing field for individuals. But we tell you they've never addressed how much is going to be allocated. What they did say is that the money that you're going to get from the UN is going to be based on your notoriety, based on the amount of views, based on the potential that they see in you. I don't see how this is a different principle from the status quo, except now the United Nations gets to decide what music is good. I don't see why we can't just let the free market decide, in which we see the individual opinions of people actually being represented. I think that's a far better world to live in. So now let's get into my two questions. So first of all, in what world is the music industry better off? So firstly, on this idea of quality, side proposition wants to tell you that people are going to listen to more diverse music when it's free. But we told you down the bench that that music is not going to exist in their world at the point at which individuals have institutionalized barriers in order to get into those, in order to actually get into the industry. We told you, we gave you a much more realistic picture of what this world is actually going to look like, recognizing that individuals come from situations in which they can't afford the time to put into this. They then talk about the idea of pirating music. I think this is a huge strategic flaw on their side, because it's only a harm insofar as you have a piracy system, insofar as you actually allow people to have ownership over their music. I think it just really demonstrates how inconsistent and shaky their stance has really been throughout this debate. So now this idea of self-expression. They want to talk to you about we told you about the idea of production value. Ellie told you that for people like Donald Glover, for K-pop, for MIA and Beyonce and Britney Spears, a lot of the production value is the kind of thing that buttresses the message and the narratives that we think are so important in society. We didn't hear any analysis as to why that production value is still going to exist on their side. We think that analysis needed to exist and it was never there. But now let's get on to our second question. In what world is the individual best able to access and appreciate music? Even if we accept the harm, which we have, that perhaps marginally less individuals are going to be able to purchase music, which is not the same thing as being able to listen to the radio or access Spotify, we still think that you have to weigh that against the kind of music that you're actually going to get and the kind of industry that you get on their side. Because we don't think that it's enough for them to just assume that it's going to be the same kind of people entering into the music industry. It's going to be distributed in the same kind of way. We think that they didn't prove why you're going to get the same exact thing that we get on our side, and that proof had to exist in order for them to win this debate. But what we told you was really crucially is what kind of music do you actually have? I think this is the most important question of this debate. We get this claim from side opposition that individuals are going to be paid the same amount, which means that they get the same kind of production value. They get the same benefits that we get on our side. But we tell you this is completely unsubstantiated. We told you a myriad of reasons as to why music is incredibly difficult to create. You need this kind of special equipment in order to have these innovative kinds of ideas. You need to be able to access a lot of kinds of mentors, a lot of kinds of places and individuals in order to expand your experience and create music that is new, music that is original, and music that people want to buy. We don't see why this benefit exists for marginalized people in society on their side of the house. What we tell you on our side is that we are the side that recognizes the reality of marginalized individuals, that we think whose voices are really important for cross-cultural communication and for self-expression, specifically when we recognize the society that we live in that historically and still oppresses these voices. We didn't really hear a response on their side. I think this is really important given the fact that they are the most vulnerable people in the community. So overall what you get is that free music comes at a far greater cost from side opposition. We tell you diversity in the music industry is lost. Good quality music is lost. And innovation is lost. We are proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank the speaker for our remarks, and now invite the reply speaker of side proposition to close the debate.
Everybody ready? Is it important to have a voice if nobody can hear it? Proposition says yes. Now, there are two questions in this round. First, the economic impact on artists and listeners, and two, does making the industry free not allow for minorities to express their opinions? Now first, it's really sad that in my last speech, I still must explain what the proposition's model is. This is simple. Artists are still getting paid the same, if not more amounts of money. However, the economic burden is being shifted from the consumers to the producers. Now, with that in mind, a click equals money. Now, with that in mind, let's wait it out. Now, we say that artists, minority artists, they incentivize their exposure and getting their message out there over money. Now, just because, not only does this go against our model, but even if you're buying the fact that our model doesn't work, even if minorities aren't getting paid, they're not just going to stop preaching to the choir and getting their message out there. People sing more than just trying to get money. People sing because they want people to understand their voice, understand that they're still heard. Their second speaker gives countless examples of songs that reach out to certain groups. No way in our model do we get rid of those groups. If not, we incentivize the production, because only in the opposition's world, the only way that you can get these songs out is if you have a large backing of a record company. However, in the proposition world, that's something that you don't need, because it's based on your merits rather than who you have behind you and how much money you have. Now, on the topic of minority voices, they're saying that we exclude the voices of people in poverty. Not only is that false, but we include people in poverty because they can actually listen to these songs. Now, specific to people producing the music, all I need is a voice and a guitar to produce a song. Now, however, in the opposition's world, what you need is your voice, you need countless amounts of money, you need a record company behind your back in order to produce something. We make the music industry much simpler and much more accessible to everybody, no matter your economic status, therefore equaling and leveling the playing field. Now, the harms that they mentioned about how, say, minority voices can't exist, which again, we've said don't exist. Those still exist technically if you buy that in both worlds. They're not solving for any of these things. Now, they also bring up the example of music videos. Now, let's think about it. Music videos are free to watch, which is why they're so popular. They bring up the example of the K-pop and why everybody watches them. Music videos are free, which is why they're so popular, because people have access to them. They can watch them without having to pay for them. Think about that. That turns all their cases. Now again, also pirating. They're saying that pirating only exists in the op world. Why would people pirate music if they already have access to better quality music for free? Pirating would not exist. We solve for that as well. Pirating only exists in the op world, which is a unique harm on the op side of this debate. Now again, when weighing this debate, there's two impacts. One, the economic. Two, minority voices being able to be expressed. Now again, look at our side. We just shift the burden from the producer to the consumer. Now, why that's important is because it's the producer that the music is getting listened by. It's the listener who wants to listen to this music to hear the message. It's not about the person producing the music making money. No, it's about the person listening to the music being able to listen to all different types of music they want without having to pay for all these songs, because they just want to hear other people's viewpoints. And we also hear refutation to the fact that people are more likely to listen to different types of music, different artists, and get more messages across and heard. Now on the topic of minority voices, again, in any way, we allow for more minority voices to be heard because it's only in the op world where rich people who have the backing of companies who have record deals can produce music, because it's based on who you know, and that's the music industry that they're representing. We're representing a music industry where everybody is equal, and it's based on your merits rather than who you have behind you. And for that reason, I strongly propose this motion and urge a proposition ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For our remarks, and invite volunteers to cross the floor and shake hands.